Routine tasks require working memory, where the brain must distinctively manage both general as well as specific tasks. For example, in baking, there exist both general rules as well as specific rules for baking and working the oven. A general rule, for example, is that knowing that there needs to be specific time for the baking as well as specific temperature for the baking. And a specific rule for the baking is, for example, the fact that you need a specific type of temperature if you're baking a bread or if you're baking a cake. And also the time differs depending on what you're baking. Those are the specific rules. One of the most recently published papers on working memory talks about just that. How does the brain manage general rules versus specific rules? And the beauty of these findings is that it also connects the physical brain with the non-physical brain. The physical brain being the neurons that you can physically touch and see, and whereas the non-physical brain is the electrical activities of the brain, in this case, brainwaves frequencies. It appears that the brain creates specific and distinct pieces and spaces in the brain for specific general rules that then can be controlled via the brain waves frequencies. The scientists found that there appears to be an interplay among these different distinct brainwave frequencies when it comes to the working memory. And higher frequency gamma waves appear to come in when there is time to execute an operation, such as storing the information from the sensory organs. But the curious part is that when brainwaves frequency are at work, they are generally happening around the whole brain, around the whole cortex. So how is it that they are working or appear to be working with individual or a group of neurons within a specific pieces of the cortex of the brain? We also know that the neurons that carry information about a specific item, they also can exist all over the brain, all over the cortex and physical pieces of the brain. Some of these neurons spike and become excited about specific tasks, and that's when they start working, and others become excited and spike when it comes to other tasks. So this is very enigmatic to us. So the question is, how can these brainwaves frequency control the right neurons at the right time for the specific right tasks? Also, why is it that a specific neuron spikes when a specific information needs to be, for example, stored in the brain, but another neuron spikes when that same information needs to be recalled from the brain? These scientists figure out that all these enigmatic questions could be answered by a theory called spatial computing theory. In the spatial computing theory, individual neurons that represent an type of information, for example, could be scattered all over the cortex. They don't necessarily need to be in one specific space of the cortex. But the rule that applies to these neurons that carry this specific information, it only applies to the pieces of network that they belong to. But these patches of neural networks are determined by the pattern of the brainwaves frequencies, in this case beta or gamma waves. In other words, individual neurons encode specific items of information and can be selectively associated with general rules by the brainwaves controlling the patches and pieces that they inhabit. For example, in any given patch or piece of the cortex, any given neuron within that space and piece of the cortex may be excited by the gamma waves, but only the neurons that represent the item that needs to be recalled or stored is spiked and excited the most among the network of the neurons that they belong within. There's also a huge flexibility of cognition that appears within these pieces of neural network that exists within the cortex, and that is that they are very flexible. In other words, when we learn new things or when we are presented with new things, these do change. These patches and pieces and individual neurons that are getting either more excited or less excited are definitely flexible, which again turns us back into the plasticity of the brain. To sum up, the brain appears to apply wave frequencies onto the physical, tangible pieces of the cortex of the brain to control the exact right neurons at the right time for the right and specific task at hand. This goes back to the decades of research that I personally have been involved in, where the fact that we also have, in addition to the physical brain, this non-physical brain, in other words, the brain waves, we can't really touch them, but there is an interplay between the non-physical brain and the physical brain. And these are clear scientific findings where it shows that there appears to be an orchestration that is happening that is led and controlled by the brain waves that then control the physical brain, in this case patches and networks of neurons, the physical neurons, where we can clearly see spikes in electricity within individual and networks of neurons.